Hi, everyone. Boeing has entered a historic plea deal with the DOJ, and we're going to talk about what the future could hold for the company. I'm your host, Bill Coffin, and this is the Ethicast. Aerospace giant Boeing has accepted a plea deal with the U.S. Department of Justice for violating the conditions of a deferred prosecution agreement it secured in 2021, following the tragic 2018 crash of Lion Air Flight 610 and the 2019 crash of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, both of which involved Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. 346 people died between the two crashes, which forced the grounding of 737 MAX aircraft worldwide and brought to light serious safety and compliance issues within the company. After the investigation that followed, the DOJ charged Boeing with conspiracy to defraud the Federal Aviation Administration's Aircraft Evaluation Group in connection with that group's evaluation of Boeing's 737 MAX airplanes. From that, Boeing secured its deferred prosecution agreement in 2021, requiring it to pay $2.5 billion in fines and victim compensation and to establish an independent compliance function. Since then, however, whistleblowers have revealed that Boeing has not lived up to the DPA, which is what led us to this plea agreement. In it, Boeing must plead guilty to fraud charges and go on a 3-year probation period, hire an independent compliance monitor for 3 years, pay $243.6 million in criminal penalties, and perhaps most meaningfully, spend at least $455 million on improving its safety and compliance functions within the next 3 years. With us to explain what all of this means for Boeing and what kind of future it can build for itself is Ethisphere Chief Strategy Officer Erica Salmon Byrne. Erica, welcome to the show. Sometimes the world demands that we stop what we're doing and address something in the moment, and this really feels like one of those times, doesn't it?
It really does, Bill. And the I may be one of the few people out there that has read the plea deal that was not intimately involved in the negotiations or the conversation with the DOJ. But it is a riveting read for those of you who have not had a chance to check it out.
So I'm going to start by quoting you back to yourself with something that you told me earlier today, and it was every plea deal or resolution with the government holds lessons for compliance professionals. So can you tell me what are some of the biggest lessons that are to be learned here?
Bill, that's something that you and I have talked about a lot in the past. No consent decree, no deferred prosecution agreement, no plea deal should really go unmined by compliance professionals. There are lessons in there for what could happen at your organization. With a little creativity, everybody can think of what this could look like for them. And then there are also lessons in how the regulators are thinking about issues right now and what they are expecting to see in the event that they come in to look at a program. And so, any compliance officer worth their salt should really be looking at all of those documents to make sure that they understand what the regulators might be expecting if they wind up in a conversation with them. There were a couple of things that stood out to me in the plea deal. The biggest one is the de-siloing of the program. So in the statement of facts, one of the things that the department says, and Boeing of course has to agree with as part of the plea deal, is the anti-corruption and anti-bribery program at Boeing was siloed. It was separate from any other compliance efforts that might have been in place at the organization. So it was sort of a one-off risk-specific program. And as part of the resolution of their issues, what Boeing has to do is Boeing has to connect that program with its safety and quality program, because the government is looking at safety and quality compliance failures as fraud failures. And so they have basically said, given the business that Boeing is in, that a failure of compliance and safety and quality is fraud on the government. And Boeing has to create a comprehensive program that links its anti-corruption and anti-bribery efforts to its quality efforts and really holistically goes from across all of the risk areas rather that the organization is facing. We have been talking about de-siloing programs for a decade. We have been talking about data layering for a decade. And the reasons for that are exceptionally strong. Because if you think about compliance as a second line of defense model, where audit is your third line of defense, all of your compliance functions have to be pulling in the same direction. They have to be coordinated and they have to be working together. We saw the first indications of this position from the government's perspective in the evaluation of corporate compliance programs updates, where they specifically said that in the event a program is in front of them, they will be asking, what data did you try to get your hands on that you couldn't? that might have prevented the issue that happened. That was the first indication of data layering, rather, which is really this practice of saying, okay, here's my data set. What does your data set look like? Let's not be myopic about what we're looking for in the data,
Mhm.
but let's instead partner together across quality, safety, IT, HR, finance, and compliance to and communications. All of those sister functions to have a holistic view of what's happening across the business. We did a Bella Asks earlier this year where we talked about the Jurassic Park example, where if you are tracking your 47 velociraptors, you only ever see 47 velociraptors in the park. When the fact of the matter is you have, 4 times that many velociraptors and you've got a velociraptor problem. Well,
Exactly.
basically what the government has said to Boeing in this plea deal is you have a velociraptor problem and you need to make sure that your program is set to be able to capture however many velociraptors there are in the park, not just the 47 that you've trained your program to look for.
Yeah, and the really exciting thing about all this, apart from the fact that we got a chance to say Velociraptor on the show one more time, but seriously though, one of the exciting things about this is that the path forward for Boeing is it's not all on the compliance function. It's
Right.
actually the path forward. It gives a lot of opportunity for all those sister functions to have a really important part to play in crafting the recipe for success for Boeing going forward, and so it
Mhm.
gives a lot of people a chance to be the hero here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm reminded of the conversation that I had with Doug Lankler back when he was the chief compliance officer for Pfizer in the mid aughts when they went through their off-label marketing issues. And part of Doug's big campaign for Pfizer's program post the resolution of all of those challenges, it was a program that he called It's Mine. And the point of the It's Mine program was, whose responsibility is it to do the right thing? It's mine. Everybody was part of It's Mine. And it's
Yeah.
that same sort of attitude that Boeing is being asked to cultivate here, which is you need to think about safety and quality as important as fraud, as corruption, as
Yeah.
bribery, as some of these other sort of significant risks. And if you don't think about it holistically, oh, guess what? Here comes your monitor to make sure that you are.
I'm so glad you brought up Pfizer because that's such a great example of an organization that had a lot of work to do, turned it around, and embraced the solution. And as a result, in a way, Pfizer is also a very strategic organization. Boeing is very
Mhm.
strategic. We're all invested in Boeing being successful, right?
Absolutely.
And we're all invested in Pfizer being successful. And guess what? A pandemic came along. And because Pfizer put in that work, they were ready to seize the moment in a way that probably they couldn't have been if they had been the same organization they had been back in the mid aughts. So
Right.
it's really exciting to see that, and I love the Pfizer example quite a lot. When we look at what this plea entails, how much work does Boeing have to do you think,
Mm.
to unlock the success that comes with building and operationalizing a culture of business integrity? And more importantly, how likely do you think it is that Boeing can or will achieve this?
Yeah, so Boeing's got a lot of work to do, just based on the public filings and sort of publicly available information. Boeing's got a lot of work to do in changing attitudes and perspectives about what compliance looks like. And so, again, going back to the plea deal, you have the government repeatedly talking about this concept of de-siloing the program. Well, you can de-silo the program itself, but you also have to de-silo attitudes. And de-siloing attitudes is harder than de-siloing the program. So, that's going to be a lift. And the people that are going to be responsible for that work are going to have to put in the time. My
Yeah.
hope, Bill, is that the monitor that the government chooses, because the plea deal makes clear that the government is
Mhm.
going to post an RFP, and it is going to select the monitor in consultation with Boeing. But unlike some other resolutions where the company gets to select their own monitor, this was a place where the families that were involved in those very tragic crashes insisted on the government not allowing Boeing basically to select its own police person. And the purpose of the monitor is to serve as the bridge between the company, the government, and the families of those involved, and make sure that the company is doing what it needs to be doing. And so, having somebody other than the company select the person who is in that role, I very much understand where the families were coming from and why they pushed on that. Hopefully, the person that is selected is going to really lean into the why behind that de-siloing, is going to think about what it means to have a holistic compliance program that addresses all of the organization's risk areas where all of those various functions are partnering together. because that's what this is going to take, is
Yeah.
both the company leaning in to that reality and the monitor making sure that they hold their feet to the fire and make them do the work.
One of the points of the plea is, quote, Boeing shall invest in its compliance, quality, and safety programs a total of at least $455 million, representing, on an average annual basis, an increase of approximately 75% above Boeing's previously planned expenditures on its corporate compliance program for fiscal year 2024.
Yep.
Now, at the same time, Boeing registered annual losses in the last 5 consecutive years. And in 2023 alone, it lost $2.24 billion. So
Yeah.
there's a lot going on there. And look, everybody in this space is acutely aware of budgetary constraints.
Mhm.
Granted, Boeing has to spend this money on compliance. But
Right.
looking at the bigger picture, how might Boeing look at this not as an expense, but as an investment in getting back to profitability?
You and I have talked about what was the catchphrase? If it isn't Boeing, I'm not going. Right. That was the 1970s safety catchphrase
Yeah.
for Boeing. And now you've got, all the travel sites letting you sort based on whose plane you're going to be getting on, and people are choosing not to fly on the Boeings. They've got to turn this ship around from a consumer faith perspective, from a safety and quality perspective. And so if I were whispering in the ears of Boeing's brand new CEO who is stepping in to, with quite a workload ahead of him, one of the points that I would be making is this is an opportunity not only to fix the compliance culture at Boeing and to address the government's expectations, but to use it as an opportunity to communicate directly to stakeholders like the flying public what you are doing,
Mhm.
specifically what you are doing to make sure that problems and concerns with safety come to the forefront quickly and early so that you can address them. They're going to have to do that work. And simply saying safety is our priority is not going to cut it. And so, using this money that you're going to have to spend on the program as an opportunity to also win back the hearts and minds of the flying public, that is time well spent. There's also a great track record of companies with issues spending a lot of money setting up very strong programs and then turning around and seeing significant profitability as a
Mhm.
result of that work. So you can look at what Walmart spent in the wake of the New York Times anti-corruption investigation. They've got a world-class program at this point. You can look at Pfizer. You could look at First Energy. I mean, there's so many examples out there of companies taking these massive crises, taking these mandatory resolution situations, and turning them into something that is a profit engine for the company. And none of those companies I just referenced do you put your faith in when you step into a flying tube and go 35,000 feet above the earth.
Yeah.
So I would argue that there's an even better case to be made that Boeing can turn this to a business advantage by spending money that they're going to have to spend because it's a regulatory expectation.
Well, Erica, thank you so much for joining us and for offering some really great insight on this. Like I
Hmm.
said before, we all have something to gain by Boeing being successful.
Yep.
And so I really appreciate your focus on what solutions for Boeing might look like rather than just dwelling on the challenges it faces currently.
I think there's lessons in this story for all of us. And I would encourage anybody listening to this who hasn't had a chance to take a look at the plea deal to spend a little time with the plea deal. It's a riveting read, and it really does set out where the government sees Boeing having gone wrong over the course of the last several years, and what it looks like for them to get back on track. And there, as I said, there are lessons there for all of us. And nothing would make me happier than in a couple of years, Bill, to look up and say, "Wow, they did it! Right? They did it." It would be a great story to tell. So I'm just putting that out into the universe that hopefully that will be exactly what we get to do.
To read Boeing's plea deal in full, visit www.justice.gov. And for a wealth of helpful free resources on ethical culture, compliance program structure and authority, corporate governance, and more, please visit the Ethisphere Resource Center at ethisphere.com/resources. I'm Bill Coffin, and this has been the Ethicast. For more episodes, please visit the Ethisphere YouTube channel at youtube.com/ethisphere. And if this is your first time enjoying the show, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Thanks so much for joining us. And until next time, remember, strong ethics is good business.